So I think this is probably where my threes tier list based on beta so far is. Again, subject to change, but this is how I'm feeling. And this is going to be for threes. This is going to be keeping in mind generally how many comps a spec can play, as opposed to like how strong those comps are. So, you know, Holy has fewer comps that it can play, but the comps that it can play are pretty good, right? They're all rank 1 viable, I would say, for sure. So I'll do a separate video for actual comp tier lists of all the main comps, the S tier comps. I think at S tier, A tier, probably B tier. I won't do everything, but you know, the main comps that sit in those tiers, I think is something that is worth doing, and at least my opinion on it is going to be potentially useful for some people. Keep in mind that I haven't played any MoP private servers. This is all from my beta. I played about 1.5k games or something like that on beta now, so getting a rough idea for things. Also keep in mind that they keep tweaking resilience, they keep tweaking dampening, they even keep tweaking the weapons we can use. So they just added in the 490 weapons, stuff like that. So everything keeps changing a little bit, adjusting a little bit. New comps that didn't work before will work now, things like that. So I think Mage can just play in everything though. That's what I mean by this is like the frequency, right? Mage can just go with so much stuff and do well. They can go with Warriors, you know, they can go with Windwalker, they can go with Lock, they can go with Boomy. You know, and you can play with like a multitude of different healers. You can play RMP, you can play RMD, you can play freaking Audi, you know? So like the Frost Mage is really, really versatile in MoP. So that's why I've put it in S+ tier. I actually had Warlock up there as well, but I think that Mage can potentially play with more things. Although I think the really strong Warlock comps are insanely strong. I actually think that Warlock is harder to get maximum value out of than Mage right now. Like doing damage on Mage is a lot easier now than in earlier classic expansions, just because of Ice Lance, basically. You know, actually doing the damage is almost the trivial part, right? And the difficult part is seeing the goes and doing the setups and stuff. Yeah, that's why I've got Mage there. I think Warrior and Druid are kind of self-explanatory. Just probably Rest of Druid, I'd say, is maybe one of the most overtuned specs ever. But Warrior has an insane amount of tools, and I actually think really good Warriors can really shine in MoP. Whereas in previous expansions, Warrior was a little simpler, and it was a lot harder to distinguish a really good Warrior from a really bad one. Whereas now it's, yeah, there's just so much Warriors can do. It's crazy. Next tier, S tier, we got Resto Shaman and Mistweaver Monk. I think Mistweaver Monk is pretty strong, but it's a little bit more niche than Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman can just play in more stuff. And I think potentially Resto Shaman could come up towards S+ tier even. I think there is a little gap between the two. Shaman can play with a lot of different things. They're pretty versatile, mainly because of the strength of Tremor, I feel like, and just like all of their healing is very instant based. They have solid CDs. Offensively and defensively, they're pretty good. Mistweavers as well. They slot nicely into cleaves with the way that they can heal. Their healing is pretty safe in how much of it is instant, and their cooldowns are pretty absolute in terms of saving people. So that's why I put them in the S tier. They got a bunch of different cleaves and things like that they can play. Then we got Survival Hunter. So as you see, I put the healers on the left. But next we got Survival Hunter. I think Survival is close to S tier. I think there's a lot of different comps that they can play as well. You could argue that Survival is an S tier as well. And honestly, maybe it should be. As I said, this is kind of subject to change a little bit, but Survival is insanely strong. The damage is really good, and the control is really, really good from Survival with the trap. They got Scatter, they got Trap, they got Wyvern. They can play with the stun arrow thing as well. They can purge. They got knock trap. They got snake trap. They got flare. They got all sorts, right? They got so much stuff. And defensively, they're pretty decent as well. Plus, they can give their team freedom and sack, right? So this is overall really, really strong utility as well. But they can play with warriors. They can play with ferals. They can play with hunters. They can play with DKs. I think you can. I've even seen hunters playing with warlock. I've seen the hunter play with a moonkin and make it work. So there's tons of hunter comps. Maybe Hunter Windwalker even, Hunter Enhanced, if you want to get spicy. But they got all sorts that they can play with. Hunter Ret definitely works as well. I think that's a really good comp for Priest too. Next we got Athlete. I think Athlete's just has so many tools. And the fact they got instant soul swap here is crazy. If the Warlock is good at doing damage, they're going to absolutely destroy. But they've also got instant Shadow Fury and instant Fear. And the instant Fear cooldown reduces as they get hit. So it's just really annoying to track. And they just feel like they've always got it up. They can really start goes easily by themselves with those tools, but their defensives are really strong as well. So yeah, a good Warlock can really control the game. And then Ellie. Obviously, Ellie having Tremor that they can use while feared to break their team out of fear, and they can use twice. They can use it twice, right? They can reset the Tremor cooldown. Otherwise, it's a minute. But it's just insane burst damage, insane damage overall, good control, really hard to kill. Overall, just a really solid spec that goes really nicely with Wrestle Druid and Monk and even Pala, I would say. I don't know about Holy. I haven't played too many comps for Holy Priest, but pretty versatile overall. They can play with a decent number of DPS classes. And then in the A tier, I've got Holy Priest and Holy Pala. I actually think Holy Priest is slightly stronger than Holy Pala, and I actually think that the good Holy Priest comps are really good compared to the good Holy Pala comps. I think the tier is a bit above in that regard, but I think they can play similar amounts of stuff at a decent level overall. So that's why I put them both in the A tier. As for DPS, I think MM is also really good. It's very, very close, I think, to Survival. Potentially that could come up into S tier, and Survival could come up into A tier. I wouldn't hate that. That's potentially our change I will just make anyway, to be honest. We got Enhanced there, very similar to Ellie, just kind of the melee version, quite durable as well. But really good utility overall to just be really annoying. And then we've got BM slightly below. I think that this is that the advantage of BM is that it's slightly easier to play and to pilot compared to the other two hunter specs, and it's slightly weaker, I would say, but still really good with certain specs. There are fewer comps where you elect to run the BM over the Survival or the MM, I would say, so that's why I've got it a little bit lower. Boomy as well, it's got a few decent comps, not as many as I'd say like Ellie or Enhance or the Hunters or the Warlocks. But the comps that it does have are pretty good too. But I think Moonkin actually probably shines a little bit more in 2s than 3s overall. And same should be said, I think, for like, to be honest, Windwalker and Unholy DK, like, you see them a little bit more in 2s, and I think their strengths come through a little bit more in 2s as well. But Windwalker has really good burst, and they've got really good single target control with their para, only 15-second CD on that one. They can set stuff up really nicely with that. Got good mobility, really durable themselves as well as a result of it. They've got the dash and the port to get out of trouble, and the Karma is pretty short CD. So I think that's quite a big deal. They're kind of quite a slippery target to go on. And yeah, they can really put out an insane amount of burst, especially when they have another DPS assisting them. And with their Touch of Death, they just kill shit under 10% right? So scary stuff. And then we got on a Holy DK, right? Which is, again, a similar thing. And they can kind of play together quite well in 3s. But yeah, in 2s, that's where they I would say shine a little bit more. They have when they pop their CD, they have one like really big go. And then outside of that, they're more just an annoyance really and a pain to deal with due to all their little CDs and pet stuns and grips and charges and slows and stuff like that. So it's they've got this one scary go you got to respect, and then outside of that, it's kind of just ticking over, I guess, until their stuff comes back. So that's why they're a little lower, I'd say. And they got a good few like all-in comps, I guess, that they can play, but outside of that, they're not as strong as some of the other melee on the list. Destrolock and Fire Mage, I've got a little bit lower. I think that there are comps where they work, but most of the time you want to be bringing their other spec counterparts, as they just bring more and are just generally stronger in that role. So that's why I've got these down in A tier. And there's definitely comps where these specs are good and work, but just not as many as the other ones. So that's why I brought them down a touch. And then in the B tier, this is kind of like the reject tier. Actually, no, disc tier is definitely the reject tier. No one gonna be playing anything successful with disc. We'll talk about that later. B tier is like they got like 1, maybe 2 comps that can work, right? So Feral has jungle. I don't know what else they can play other than jungle. Maybe jungle with a different healer potentially, but Feral kind of got gutted before this patch, where they don't have instant clone procs anymore, and their defensives aren't amazing. So they rely a lot on actually putting out good pressure and then being able to run and avoid damage in between, and then potentially having good cross CC and casting clones themselves should be annoying. Ret has like PHP, I believe, is decent, and then the odd cleave, maybe like Ret with a DK, stuff like that. Maybe Ret with a Windwalker potentially. They got these niche little cleaves that they can play, but overall you're not going to run into them that frequently at higher ratings because there's just not that much that they can play that is viable, I guess. And so yes, things like PHP are really good. Believe you can play PHP with a BM Hunter. Apparently that's really good. There's a couple of things, but yeah, put them a little bit down lower. And same with SP, right? SP has like God Comp, and this is another spec that got gutted right before this patch that we're on. They lost like their swap and stuff like that. But yeah, they can play God Comp, and that's really good. but they don't have that much else. So that's why I brought them down. Same thing for sub-row. They have RMD, RMP. RMP is okay. RMD is decent, but they don't have too much else that they can play. And they're borrowing a lot of power, I believe, from the other 2 specs that they're playing with, and sort of setting up for them to be able to play the game more, essentially. So that's where I'm at with sub. And I think combat has some stuff as well, but I haven't really seen too much of it. So that's why I haven't put it on the list. These are specs that I just haven't seen enough on the beta to really put them in a good tier. But that more than likely means that they're a little bit lower down on the tier, right? Maybe there's some fringe comps that they can play that people will try and make work and might well work, but yeah, again, they're quite rare to see. So I haven't put them on just because I want it to be as accurate as I can be with it. And then Disc is just dead, man. Disc doesn't have any tools. It's just worse than Holy in every way, basically. The only real thing that you bring that Holy doesn't is Atonement Healing, and Atonement heals for about 2 in PvP because it's designed for raid, right? And it doesn't scale down properly, so even the shielding is not significantly greater than it is as Holy. So yeah, it's pretty dead. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. It just doesn't bring anything unique of note that you wouldn't just take another healer for. So you won't be seeing many discs. To be honest, you won't see that many priests overall, but you definitely will see even fewer priests. There's going to be like probably not even 10% of priests playing disc compared to Holy. So yeah, that's the tier list for 3s in terms of frequency and comp diversity, or spec diversity, how many comps they can play, that kind of thing, how frequently you'll see them on the ladder at decent ratings. I will do one for 2s as well, and that will probably look slightly different. I'm gonna mix that up a little bit more, but there's some key differences there, I would say. And then we will do some overall comp tier list as well in a few days, but that potentially is going to be a little bit longer and more complicated because there is a lot of comps that people can play in MoP. And I think that's the reason that people like MoP so much. Like, there is so much comp diversity in MoP compared to other expansions. So much stuff works. So that's what's on the books, what's coming up. Hopefully you enjoy this. If there's anything you don't agree with, let me know. If you think that there's a spec with loads of comps that I've missed out, let me know. If you think there's a spec with not that many comps, or the comps that I've said aren't actually that good, let me know. But again, keep in mind that this is not how good the individual spec is, but more to do with how much they can actually play and how diverse they can actually be and still be successful with that comp. So yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one.